For all of us, it's about predicting where the consumer is going and getting half of it right.
One of the things we want to do is create ads that don't suck.
Embracing change creates great possibility.
I'm Alan Hart, and this is Marketing Today.
Today on the show, I've got Jay Livingston, CMO of Bark. Bark is the makers of BarkBox and was founded on the realization that there were very few companies injecting innovation and fun into a $69 billion pet industry. BarkBox now has 700,000 subscribers with a 95% retention rate, and this year is said to cross the $230 million in revenue and is profitable. Jay joined Bark in July of 2017, and prior to that, he was Senior Vice President of Global Marketing at Bank of America. He's an active angel investor and advisor to companies across New York City, and he's a founding board member of Unite America. Now, I should say we recorded this episode in their headquarters in Chinatown, so if you hear a siren or two in the background, that's just the fun of New York City and recording your podcast. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Jay Livingston. Well, Jay, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about, but I thought we could start off with your background, where you got started.
Yeah, for sure. From Knoxville, Tennessee originally. I was recruited out of undergrad into Nations Bank at the time in Charlotte, North Carolina. Was with Nations Bank, which later bought Bank of America and became Bank of America for about 20 years, working in sort of every functional area of marketing at the company at some point or another, marketing and strategy. And about 2.5 years ago, I decided to leave Bank of America. I've been doing a lot of angel investing and advising in New York and was really enjoying spending time with a lot of the cool growth startups here. I was trying to just originally stay close to what was happening in marketing and close to the customer. And as I got into that space, was just really enjoying how it was hand-to-hand combat every day for these companies. So I took 2 years off and I traveled the world and restored an old muscle car and started a third political effort called Unite America with a bunch of people and a lot of projects. And when I started looking again, I was really looking for a company that sort of had 4 qualities that I was looking for. They were consumer facing, that made a physical product, and as opposed to say software or something like that, that also had a product that brought people joy and was headquartered in New York City. And there aren't a lot of CMO jobs that come up like that every year. So as I started talking to a friend, Henrik Werdelin, who also runs an incubator called Prehype, where he's incubated a lot of companies that I've invested in a couple of those, he said, we may be needing a CMO soon. So the more I looked at the company, the more interesting I thought it was, and here I am.
Well, so you started out in Charlotte, and then I'm assuming with Bank of America, you moved to New York at some point?
I did, yeah. Right? I moved to Chicago and then New York.
So North Carolina, as you know, is near and dear to my heart. That's where I grew up. That's where I live.
Yeah,
so
great place. I love Charlotte. I love my time there.
And my accent's gone, but it might come back as we talk because you got a little bit of one. So
if we had a couple beers, it'd probably come back more, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
So now BarkBox has kind of rebranded as Bark, and you're doing a lot more now than just the subscription box. Can you tell us about the transition the company's made and kind of where it's going?
Yeah. So Bark's made up of really 3 businesses at the moment. BarkBox, which we're most known for, the subscription business. We have close to 700,000 subscribers to the monthly box of toys and treats. It's very themed every month. And interestingly, we have about 95% retention rate on the box. It's been a great product for us. We also have BarkShop, which is where customers come to buy all things dog, toys, treats, and lots of other products. And then recently we moved into retail with Target. We have the end caps and end lines of the pet sections of all 1,800 Targets in the country. So this BarkBox, which was really the start of it, has really allowed us to gain customer trust and develop a community through our social platform that was built around that and expand into these other businesses. And we've got a couple other things launching this year that we can't really talk about yet. But as an entrepreneurial company, we're always looking at that next thing in the dog space. We're really all about making dogs happy. So whatever we can come up with that does that, we will launch quickly and give it a shot.
So it's pretty early on, I think you guys started making your own products. And so I think almost all of them are now your own, right?
Basically everything in boxes we make.
So, how has that model evolved over time? I mean, in terms of like where you get ideas and all that kind of thing.
I think the founders learned early on, they realized that to make the box much more interesting for customers and sticky, frankly, it had to be more than just products. So they really wanted to bring a level of excitement. They put these themes around it that every month it's a totally dog-focused theme that a lot of our customers say, that's a big reason why they actually get the box. Our head of creative is a former Lego designer. We put a lot of emphasis on what's going in there to make it an exciting experience for both the dog and the dog parent every month. So yeah, I think it's interesting too. We are now at the point where we've gone from about 150 different versions of the box based on the dog's size and allergies in that to about 1,500 versions. And we build those around play styles. So if you're a super chewer or a heavy chewer, different size dog, and we'll soon be at 15,000 different versions of the box. So they really evolved it quickly, understanding that it had to be more than just this value play. It was really all about a magic, surprise, and delight kind of experience every month.
Good. And you've got this huge growth plan, right? You're moving into retail big time.
Yeah.
You've got, I'm sure, other things coming down the pipe you can't talk about. But as you make this large expansion, what are the challenges ahead?
Yeah, I mean, you catch fire often as I think a growth company with a certain product. And we caught fire with the subscription box. And retail is a great example of a place where Target had really been pursuing us to enliven their pet aisle and really bring some excitement there. They were losing some of their pet business to Petco and these other companies. And so we finally put together an approach to go into Target. And then I think we got there and realized, we don't know a whole lot about retail. And the lead times in retail are so long, right? So the learning you get on month 1, you can't really employ until month 5 or 6. And that's a little bit different for us. And so we quickly realized we had a lot of work to do to make what's special about Bark come through in the retail side of things. And so have spent a lot of work, modifying everything from our packaging to our product mix to our pricing and even those end caps and what that looks like. And we're feeling a lot better about like where that is now. But, that's a process that takes a little bit of work. And when you're a very aggressive company, our approach here is like, let's take a swing early. And then sometimes we get into a situation where like, well, wow, now we've got to really fulfill on that. So I think that's not going to change. That's kind of who we are. But that's something we're always thinking about, like quickly refining what we're doing to fit the different spaces where we sell.
Right. So it sounds like a symbiotic relationship with Target. They kind of needed something to freshen up their assortment mix. You guys came in. Really nice toys, I have to admit.
Yeah.
How do you manage those experiences across online and the box, which is kind of a surprise, I'm assuming, every month for the owner and the dog, to retail? And it's a different feel, but I'm wondering how you think about architecting those experiences.
Yeah, I mean, we talk all the time about creating an emotional relationship with our customers. And of course, the dogs are ultimately our customer. Like if we can make the dog happy, the dog parents will get in line, and get behind us. We did a great job early on with that social community. We launched something called Bark Post, which was a media business around everything we were doing with dogs and a lot of original content and so forth. And I think we gained a lot of muscle memory there. The business, media businesses are really tough. So that didn't take off to the degree that we wanted. But yet we learned so much about building a community. I think we have, for instance, 7 times the engagement of all the other pet brands in the US combined in our social world.
Wow.
So we really have the pulse of what's happening. We have the trust, and we're constantly engaging with consumers that way. Also, even though we were a digital first company, they were smart enough to build a great customer call center called Happy that we talk to our customers all the time across all of these businesses, across the subscription box, BarkShop, and Target. And that really creates a strong relationship. We have great policies. If somebody has a problem with their toy or they want a replacement, we're right there. Retail is definitely more challenging because if you're a digital first company, you sort of own that space. You own all these communications, these touch points. It's really hard to give up some of that control and some of that customer information. And frankly, we're still working on it. You have to partner with the retailer. Target's been pretty good about giving us information, but we're also not P&G.
Right.
So we're not necessarily, we can't go in and Target and demand, certain things. And so that's something we've really had to learn our way into. There's no easy answer for that. It's really just trying to pull every lever you can to stay in touch with how those products are working and what the customer is liking and not liking in your retail offering.
Right. So As the growth has changed the company, I mean, we're here, I should have said this earlier, but we're here in your headquarters in Chinatown.
Yeah.
And it looks like you've taken over the entire building.
Yeah.
How is this growth changing the company? How does the company need to evolve as you go forward?
And one of the things I was really brought in to help do is scale, right? So you've had all this success in these products. We're constantly testing new things. And what the kind of discipline that I talk about a lot from a marketing standpoint is, let's make sure we test things that we're passionate about and that we're super excited about. And if we like them, we think customers will like them. We also need to make sure they scale. They have the opportunity to scale if they're successful, and that we measure those things. A lot of growth companies, I think, put a lot out there, and then you ask what happened with each thing, and they say, well, I don't know, because they don't have a culture of necessarily measurement and some of that discipline. Also building better data capabilities. So even though we're a digital first company, it wasn't our ethos early on to collect a lot of hard data. We were great about collecting soft data with those relationships. And so I think that's a thing we're really working on now, is building our sort of data farm capabilities and being able to quickly access data and make decisions with the help of that data throughout the company. And that's a challenge. And the last thing I would say is also, you think about the folks that come in that love working for a company of 10 to 15 people aren't always the same skill sets as a company that now has over 400 people and may have 1,000 in a year and a half. And so, getting that right with the talent in the organization is kind of a big step in our evolution as well.
Doing research on this and having a little bit of a conversation through email back and forth, your core demographic is going to change as you try to expand both in retail, which pulls you into many different places across the country.
Yeah.
How is it changing, and how are you approaching that? It's not uncommon for a lot of direct-to-consumer companies. Right?
Yeah. I think our first audience, frankly, was a lot of affluent, urban, millennial women and that lived in these major cities and look a lot like we look at Bark. Right. And then, quickly as others discover your product, we get into the empty nester group that are crazy about their dogs and treat their dogs like children. We've started to attract more males. And then we've also moved out of a lot of those urban markets into, more rural markets where Target may have given us a little bit of that, but also, a lot of people in rural markets have dogs. One of the challenges for us is, and this is a challenge for every New York or Silicon Valley company, is we're in such a bubble here. And I think being Southern, you can probably relate to this a little bit. Everybody in this building is basically, they hate it when I say it, but a bit of a hipster, right? A Brooklyn hipster. And we constantly have to work. I've joked several times, like Trump supporters love their dogs too. We're all about the dogs. And how do we make sure we're not in such a bubble that we don't sort of understand what's important to a lot of the country that are our customers? And so that's something that we're always kind of working on and thinking about.
Right. Yeah, you got to move towards purple, right?
Yeah.
A little less blue, a little more red.
Yeah, for sure.
Anything that scares you about that transition? I mean, it's, for me, if I were in your role, it would be a little frightening, to be honest.
I think it scares the founders that people like me, when you bring in like a CMO who's worked at a bank, I think there was suspicion about me, like, is this guy going to really at all take away from our authenticity, take away from the magic of like what we're trying to do here? Hopefully, I've mostly convinced them that that's not going to happen. But yeah, I mean, that's something you've always got to be careful about as you really grow, especially as you grow quickly, not losing the core of what makes you special and not losing any of that connectivity. Like, we're dog crazy people. We're continuing to hire dog crazy people. And we want to think that way as long as we're around, right? And so not getting away from that through chasing growth too much. You got to stay true to who you are.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the unifying force in all of that is the dog, right?
Yeah, it's the dog. It really is.
It doesn't matter. You can't blame the parents, right? It's about satisfying the dog.
It helps to be, I love being in a company that is mission-based.
Yeah.
And we're a mission-based company, mission-based marketing. That is always that sort of unifying North Star, if you will, for what's important to us. And our founders have done a great job sort of keeping us on. That's the advantage of also having your founders still involved in the company, right? Is they really keep us focused on that.
Well, so I'm a pet owner myself. I've got, this is our second mutt that we're on. The first one passed away, but it's easy for me to think about your business. I mean, it's easy to be engaged in something like your business because you're for the dog, which is something core to our family. The content that you put is really engaging. Is there any magic that goes into how you keep your customers so engaged?
Well, one of the things you just mentioned, which is like it's a super traumatic experience, obviously, when a dog passes away, your dog passes away. And our happy team develops relationships with these customers that when they call and they have to stop their subscription or they're not buying products because a dog passed away, they'll write them a handwritten letter, often talking about the dog by name, and because they have a relationship there, and those letters and things mean a tremendous amount, and it's very authentic. I mean, I see our happy team will cry all the time at those conversations. It's like they get really attached to what's happening there. So that's the way we want to continue to operate, though. We want to feel it that way and not ever just treat any dog or dog parent as a number. And so a lot of that is by the people you hire. I'm a firm believer. Like, you got to hire the right people who have that ability to empathize and connect with customers. This is what I see all the time in these growth companies. We're going to get too big to be able to every day meet a customer or talk to a customer. Right. So we have to rely on data at scale to balance that out. One of the things that happened in Bank of America is we got so big that we stopped spending time in banking centers, right? And you stop meeting the customer. It really does become a number. The bank actually worked really hard. We worked really hard to not let that happen. That's something as we grow, we've got to pay a lot of attention to, is make sure we continue to stay as uber close to our customers as possible and understanding, their and their dogs' experiences.
That's good. So one area I've heard from CMOs and CEOs that I've interviewed is usually from big companies, is they want to think or act small. And I think what they mean by that is they want to act like a BarkBox or a Warby Parker or anybody else in that category.
Yeah.
Is there any advice, having made that transition yourself on a personal level, any advice on how to bring that thinking into a big company, big corporation?
I've learned a ton here about the founders, through our founders. When I got here, there's been nothing that surprised me from a skill set standpoint. There has not been one marketing challenge that I've thought, man, I don't know how to deal with that. But I was a planner, right? And Bank of America was an aircraft carrier that it took 3,000 people 3 weeks to get to move 2 inches, right, in one direction. And so I come in and I sort of have these plans for things. And early on, our founders were like, listen, just do it. Push, push, push. If it doesn't work, set it to the side and push again. You hear all this talk about fail fast and move through these things, but we're really living that. And I think it makes all of us nervous to not think like entrepreneurs. I had sort of an entrepreneurial bent. That was kind of my thing at Bank of America anyway, so that's come naturally. But they really help bring that out, to think about every day, don't overthink these things. Like, let's get them out there and then we'll optimize as we go. And that's been great for me. And once you get into it, it's very invigorating, right? It's a lot more fun. But there's an art to it. And you got to be careful, especially as the stakes get higher, as we get bigger. Right. So we're constantly feeling out that balance. And there's no super easy answer to that. It's something that every company has to wrestle with.
How much did your time off, that transition period, right, between Bank of America and working with startups, doing some investing, what did you learn there that do you think prepared you for this role?
I could not have done this job, nor would I have been hired for it, if I had not been doing that angel investing and spent time with a lot of those growth companies in New York. I had a total familiarity with how they worked that I would have had in my office at Bank of America. And I also wouldn't have had the credibility to talk to founders in this space about why my skill set would work somewhere like this. That was hugely valuable. I remember I got some advice early on from a VC in town, a well-known VC in town. And I told him I had this theory for how I was doing my angel investing. And I was looking for maybe non-sexy companies that had good cash flows, et cetera. And he just looked at me and said, "You're doing it all wrong." He said, "You need to set aside a hunk of money and just assume you'll lose it, because you probably will." He said, "But invest in the most interesting, smartest people you can find in the companies that you're passionate about and then you think are really just fun." He goes, "If you do that, the impact that will have on your experiences, your skill set, your network, and your brand really as a person will be way beyond that money that you probably will lose in investing in all those startups." And I remember walking out of there thinking, I wonder if he's right. And that did definitely shift a little bit of my thinking on that. And that was really smart. He was absolutely right. It's kind of given me a lot of opportunities to get involved in things like BarkBox that I just wouldn't have. So plus you learn from other folks that are going through that same space. The one thing I didn't bring, because I'd been at such a big company, is a lot of these CMOs are folks that'll move around from growth company to growth company. They have a team of people that they'll bring into each one because they know people that worked in that space. They know agencies, they know vendors that work in that space. I really don't. I know the biggest agencies in the world.
Right.
And I know very senior level marketers and so forth. But that was a place where I wasn't able to instantly like put in my team. So that's been something that I've had to adjust to a little bit and just compensate for, really getting to know that world a little bit better from a vendor standpoint.
Well, good. Well, thank you for that. I love talking about getting to know the person behind who I'm interviewing.
Yeah.
And I love this question. Sometimes people take it in very different directions, but it's a notion of, was there an experience of your past that defines or makes up who you've become?
Well, of course. I mean, it's such a great question. There are so many experiences. I'll tell you one experience, a very personal experience. I went to a private high school in Knoxville. I was son of a teacher there, and I sort of had one foot in a couple of worlds. It was sort of an affluent high school, but also as a teacher's kid, there was an element of, there was a socioeconomic sort of chain there at the school that I did not love my place on it. And I think that drove me quite a bit to say, I'm not going to be in the position down the road where I really don't control my destiny, is a stupid word in that sense, but my sort of economic position and from a status standpoint, I think that feeling was set early on that set a lot of drive in me. May have been insecurity to some degree too, that was sort of instilled at that point. I also think I realized early on in college that I had a lot of curiosity about what makes groups of people do the things they want to do. And so that's sort of sociology, it's a little bit psychology, it's marketing, it's communications. It always just fascinated me. I wanted to know why, what motivates people all the time. That really makes for a great marketer. That down the road, if you constantly have that curiosity and you're willing to, I call it sometimes learn to unlearn. I read a great article about Barry Diller in the New York Times Magazine a couple weeks ago, where he says each business he moves into, he has to learn to unlearn, everything he knew before. So I think about that all the time as you move around through different businesses, what's holding you back that way. So I think curiosity and that willingness to like throw aside what you've learned for sort of a new frontier has helped me a lot.
Interesting. What drives you? What fuels you every day?
Boy, it's a hard question when you really think about what drives the people to be especially in New York City. One reason I love being in New York, I kind of wish I lived here earlier, is you're surrounded with people all who are kind of at the tops of their fields, right? In a lot of different fields, which there aren't a lot of places in the country where it's not an industry town. And so I think the people I'm around have all had a lot of success, and it kind of pushes you and drives you to be successful. You have to almost watch that because that can start to dominate your life, which is something I think about a lot. I'm also, I stayed at one company for 20 years. I'm like a loyal person and I'm an operator. I don't want to consult. I don't want to like jump around to things. I want to get in and build and grow. Why? We'd need a longer podcast, I think, to really dive into that. But I know I am super fueled and excited about the idea of just growing something, continue to grow. And I love that at Nations Bank and Bank of America as well.
So marketers tend to be students of the craft, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times there's brands that you follow, you track. Are there any you think other people should be taking notice of, either brands, companies, or causes?
Two quick thoughts there. I love what companies like Tesla do, where they're not conventionally advertising, but like attaching that car onto their rocket ship is just the coolest thing. I mean, they get so much authentic PR and exposure from that. I love anything that is thinking about is something that a normal company is doing that you put a twist on it that just gets people's attention that didn't expect to be interested. So I love watching that. It was fascinating to me, like years ago, I remember we were pitching sort of a commercial at Bank of America that had humor in it. And I remember an executive said, well, humor will never work in financial services. It's just people are serious about insurance and banking and so forth. Right. So I think Geico came out about a year later with this lizard, right?
Yeah.
And then the caveman.
Right.
And nobody ever really heard of Geico.
Right.
And soon you had Aflac come out. Like, you can imagine going to the Aflac board and saying, okay, I've got this idea. This duck is going to come walking out of a pond and just say Aflac.
Right.
And that's going to make us almost single-handedly the most popular like corporate insurance company in the country.
Right.
Same with Geico. And it forced folks like Allstate and State Farm, who dominated that space, they had to change their entire business, their entire approach to marketing. Progressive obviously come out with Flow and all those things. Nobody ever heard of Progressive before. So that's an example of where creative marketing can take what's considered a staid business and totally upend it. So I love any example of that when people say, oh, marketing's what can marketing really do for us?
Right.
Yeah, it can do a lot across a lot of businesses.
Well, you mentioned Tesla and the rocket with the car. I immediately thought of Bank of America putting an ATM on the next rocket, the first ATM in space.
Man, if they'd let us.
Can you imagine trying to sell that through?
Yeah, for sure.
But
that extra commercial recently that they did with the guy writing sort of the scenes from he and his girlfriend's experiences on the gum packets, right?
Yeah.
It's like you think about how do you make gum emotional and relevant? And that was a place where I cried a little at the end of that commercial, right? It's a gum commercial. Anytime you can create that emotional connection, you're doing something right.
Yeah, no, I agree. Last question for you. What do you think the future of marketing is going to look like?
It's going to continue to change. I've always thought it was interesting where marketers tend to, after a few years, put themselves in like, I'm in this industry or I'm in this one space, that I focus on. And from my perspective, just always going where the eyeballs are. And it's cliche now, but radio beat up on print, but print didn't go away. Television beat up on radio. They were all convinced they were going out of business. We've still got radio. Of course, most recently, it's these social networks and the internet, and there'll be new things down the road. It's always changing and evolving. We just want to always be thinking about but every channel requires great storytelling. So how do we tell great stories that work across all the channels at all times? We're actually having to learn to do traditional media at Bark because we've been a digital first company. So we had organic social and paid social, very targeted marketing. Now we've got to learn a little bit how to do traditional and probably some more awareness brand marketing. And so I just think we don't know where the future is going, but we know that it'll be different. And so that's how I think about I'm ready for whatever that is. And we'll figure out a way to get people and their dogs interested in what we do and whatever it is.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending the time with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Marketing Today is brought to you by Atomic. Atomic focuses on unleashing the growth potential for clients we serve. Atomic is a strategic consultancy specializing in business, marketing, brand, and innovation. Our singular goal is to help you accelerate your efforts with the right mix of expertise, analysis, and creativity. Check us out at atomic.com. ATOMCK.com. Hi, it's Alan again. Marketing Today was created and produced by me, with writing and editing by Kevin Greeley, social media support by Megan Woods, art and graphic design by Sarah Dell. If you're new to Marketing Today, please feel free to write us a review on iTunes or your favorite listening platform. Don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends and colleagues about the show.
I love to hear from listeners, and you can contact me at marketingtodaypodcast.com. There you'll also find complete show notes with links to anything we talk about on any episode. You can also search our archives.
I'm Alan Hart, and this is Marketing Today.